Hi there, I'm the Extraordinary Tourist and welcome to part 4 of my studio diary series documenting the creation of this series of 3 paintings called 3 Cats' Tales, or 3 Cat Tales. This episode I said I was going to start working on the white and black details, but after looking at the images overnight, I've decided they could use perhaps a little bit more shading, and I think I'm going to attack them with a bit of blue and blue, purple and maybe a bit of green. So let's get on with that, shall we? So as I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to add a bit of green and a bit of purpley blue shading to this, and to get started I've mixed up a very dark green here, which is essentially just my primary blue, a lot of primary blue and a very small amount of my primary yellow colour, and that's it to get this dark green. And what I want to do is to try and add that into where my shadows are on the actual cat, but not sort of paint over the colour that's already there, but to create a sort of translucent green so that you can still see the orange and whatever, but you get a bit of green into it as well. So I'm going to be using a fair bit of water and just trying to paint sort of where my shadows, specifically my shadows, are likely to be. And you might think adding green in for shadows seems unusual, and it's not something that I certainly would have thought to pick as a colour for shadow many years ago, but I was once doing a painting, or it was actually a mixed media painting that was a cross between sort of watercolour and coloured pencil, like aquarelle coloured pencils, which are the pencils that you can mix water into, and I started using green and purple in my shadows on this particular painting and discovered that it really added some depth to the picture and was far more interesting than trying to create shadows with shades of black. It gave it more, it made your picture sort of a bit brighter, whereas if you use black it sort of dulls the picture slightly. As you can see, I am trying to be a little bit careful because we're getting sort of to the final stages, and I've really got to try and tighten things up and what have you, so that the final picture looks like it was painted by someone who actually knows what they're doing rather than someone who doesn't, if you like. And this green will just make for a bit of transition between the orange and the dark brown that I put on and the black that I'm going to be adding on top. It'll make it a slightly less harsh transition. Got to be really careful not to put my green on too thick. Because it's meant to be a fairly subtle sort of shading. You don't want it to become get too much green on there so that people really notice that you've put green in your shadows. It's meant to be sort of a bit sort of more subtle than that. So now I've done my green, I'm going to start on my purple. You can see there I've mixed up this purple with what was left of my blue and just added a very small amount of red to get that dark purple colour. And the reason I'm doing purple to add some shadows in is again because it'll make the picture brighter in the end than if I use black and greys to try and make shadows. But at the same time, if you actually look at shadows in the real world, a lot of them tend to have a fairly purple sort of tint to them or whatever that perhaps gives a touch of realism. But I'm also using the purple on my blue background because I want to sort of stop these cats from looking like they're just floating there. If you actually look at, say, this cat in particular, just looking at it you might imagine that it's sitting with its feet forward and its front feet in the air like that, which is pretty unnatural for a cat. But then if you look at it from the point of view of, say, looking down at the cat laying on its back with its feet in the air, then that image probably makes a bit more sense. But what I need to do is make this background look a bit like the cat is lying on it, so that it's like a rug kind of setup. So I'm going to do that by sort of putting some shadows around it, so that you get the sense that it's not sort of sitting or floating in mid-air, and it's actually on this background. And again, I'm going to try and sort of keep it reasonably watery so that the purple is more see-through than solid in colour. So you just get that hint of shadow rather than anything too really solid. So that's where I'm going to leave these paintings for today. I know you're probably expecting me to do the black and white component today, but as I said, I felt these pictures needed a bit of purple and green adding to them in the way of shadows. And as I think I said in the previous episode, that sometimes, well, pretty much painting a picture is often just deciding what feels right at the time. And after looking at these, I just felt it needed a little bit more in the way of shadows before I started adding in black and white. But in the next part, I promise you, I definitely will be doing the black and white, and we'll take these through, hopefully, to completion. So, till the next video, we shall see you later. Bye for now.